Welcome back into the Fox 9 studios. I'm Pierre Noujaim, joined once again, Minnesota United defender Zarek Valentin. What's up, ZV?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's good to be back. I know we were trying to do this a little bit earlier, but it's good that we finally got you back in studio. You guys have been busy, though. It's been a busy last 6 weeks for you guys. 6 to 8 weeks, really, because we did this, I believe, in May. So it's good to have you back. But, like I've been saying, you're a professional athlete. You have a busy schedule. You're a husband. You're a father. You're a lot busier than I am these days.
Something like that. Yeah, we've been having these 3-game weeks. Usually the months of May and June are pretty busy. I think Leagues Cup's kind of pushed it back a little bit where we've condensed our schedule. But we're going into another 3-game week. We've had, I think, 3 of those now where we're not getting much rest. We went to LA most recently, got back home around 5:30 in the morning.
Wow.
So, hashtag first world problems. Let's just say that.
Hey, well, I mean, listen, we are well, I shouldn't say well ahead of our days of staying up till 5:30 in the morning. I'm not going to put those completely in my rearview mirror, but at the same time too, listen, I just turned 40 years old, so those are getting farther and fewer between for me.
Congratulations.
So, thank you very much. I can't believe I made it here myself. It's been that long. So, when you talk about the busyness of that you guys have had with what's coming up, before we look ahead to what's coming up, I should say, I kind of want to take a look back because it is kind of the last time we talked, you guys were in a real groove. The team was in a real groove. And the last couple of months has just been, I want to call it it's almost been like a perfect storm for you guys with players that are on international duty. You've had injuries. We just saw Teemu Pukki finally come back from injury. And, there's been changes in the roster. What has the last 6 weeks really been like for this club?
I would say hectic, frustrating in the sense of not being able to get into our normal rhythm. So, for example, this week we had a week off from our last game to this coming game. So we were able to have our day off at the beginning of the week, and now we've had 2 tough training session days. We've had a little bit of a gym on our Wednesday, because that's in the middle of the week, so it gives guys time to recoup their legs. And it's been good to kind of do that because with a lot of games comes a lot of stress on your legs. So your legs need to be strong. They need to be capable to play lots of minutes and play lots of games over the course of a short period of time. So when these games come in such quick succession and we don't have a full healthy roster to where we're bringing up MNUFC 2 guys and we don't even fill the bench still, that will lead to a lot of players having logged a lot of minutes with not very much rest. So if we cannot lift and our muscles are not as strong and we're loading them a lot and we're playing a lot and not having much rotation just because of not having enough people, that will ultimately lead to injuries as well.
Sure.
So while we already have natural absences because of international break, we're seeing Tanny and Dane being gone for the longest of that. At the beginning of this break, we had 9 players, I think, leaving. We had
something like at the very beginning of the
Finns,
international
Carlos,
yes.
Alejandro, Dane, Tanny, myself.
Was it Joe?
Joe Curvin.
Yeah,
so there was
Curvin
9 guys, and Boxy turned down his call.
Did he?
Because it was a friendly.
Yeah.
So it was one of these things where we're already missing a lot of players, and then we log these heavy minutes, and then we get injuries because of that as well. So as you're saying, it's a perfect storm, but we're slowly getting out of that a little bit. I imagine like Lieutenant Dan, we're in there, we're fighting the hurricane, and then we're going to come out on the other end of that, and we're going to be, hopefully harvesting the fruits of our labor. Maybe not shrimp like it was in Forrest Gump, but
One
for
of
us,
my favorites.
But for us, it might be some better results and, being able to get back into the style of play with the rotation that we have and with the numbers that we have.
I'm glad you brought up Forrest Gump. We'll come back to that later because I do want to speak on that toward the end of the show. And if anybody's watching right now and notice that my eyes kind of going a little bit, it's not that I'm not paying attention to Zarek. Of course I am. But he and I are watching, as we're recording this, England and the Dutch are playing in the semifinal of the Euro Cup. So we are kind of cheating a little bit as we're still kind of keeping our eye on this match. It's 1-1. Before we even started recording this podcast, I turned over to Zarek and I said to myself, I'm so sick and tired of England because I believe them to be a fraudulent type team, even though they perhaps have the best talent of anybody, perhaps in the tournament, maybe even in the world with the type of talent that they have. but I've never loved their style. I've never believed in their clutchness, and they have kind of sort of proven me wrong, I guess, to this point. But even if you've been watching the Euros, I don't know how much you've been watching up to this point,
Much as
but
I can.
England is really annoying the ever-loving blank out of me because just the way that they've been able to somehow pull a rabbit out of their hat in these last couple of games.
Well, we don't need to fill in the blank there, but what I will say is they have on paper the best player in England, Phil Foden.
Yep.
They had the best player in Germany, in Harry Kane, and they had the best player in Spain, which is Jude Bellingham.
Correct.
Like voted players of the year. So
Correct.
they have the talent.
Yeah.
But when you watch them, you don't necessarily see a direct style of play and how they're going to necessarily beat you down. They have an amazing Galactico group of talent, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that they're going to do well. If you look at them on paper, they probably have the best roster. But up until this point, the best team in the tournament, Spain, is in the final. They've been best style,
Without a doubt.
best everything. So
Without a doubt.
rightfully so, they're in the final. And then in my opinion, the other best team has been Holland. So the game's right now 1-1.
Correct.
And it's been really interesting also to watch the Euro and contrast it with the Copa America, because I was trying to figure out a good way to describe it, but imagine a dance-off. You have two different styles. You have a waltz. The waltz would be the Euro. There's so much fluidity and movement, tactics. You can see the progression of build-up. And then you have this hip-hop, in-your-face.
A little samba action, maybe?
There's zero samba.
No samba? No
is
samba at all?
It is some potential high school grinding, just bodies touching, smacking into each other. The duels per minute, I saw an interesting statistic, and it was how many duels per minute it was when they contrasted the games from the Euro to the Copa, and it's not even comparable. When you watch the Uruguay-Argentina game, or the Uruguay-Brazil game, which is two incredibly talented teams, it was a street fight.
Which I did watch, yes.
It was a street fight. And,
Right.
and you see Bielsa, the coach for Uruguay, saying, oh, football's dying. It's not as fun to watch. Well, you coach a team that goes out there and is just hacking people. It's like Hack-a-Shack, but amongst the entire team. And to be fair, they also made the field smaller. I don't know if you know that.
I did hear about this, yes.
Which will naturally cause more car crashes, I would say, because the players are just physically closer. But there is this rough and tumble side of CONMEBOL and CONCACAF that the Euros just don't have. They don't have that grit, but at times you'll say that they don't have as much football. So that's why the World Cup is so interesting, because it's these contrasting styles being put together and testing each other and seeing which one breaks out.
And I might be making this up in my head, but, for watching the game for as long as I have, I've always, if you put the Euro style and the South American style up on two screens, my eyes in the past, and I shouldn't even speak in the past tense, I would say still probably to this day, will gravitate toward the South American style, because in South America, I always felt, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, it just felt like, it's funny that you mention a dance. It felt like it was faster, crisper. There was a little bit more joy to the game as opposed to a meat grinder of a game that I would see sometimes with the European clubs. But it almost feels like in these two tournaments, because I would have to agree with you, it almost feels like those two styles are inverted at this point. It feels like South America now is the one that's kind of, the rough and tumble kind of get through it kind of a game. And the Europeans are the one that has a little bit more looseness to it.
For sure. And if you look at it, and I saw an interesting graphic where you can see the flow of the tactical systems against each other, right? How there's very methodical movements. And again, it's just a bunch of car crashes in CONMEBOL, and these games are physical. And if you're not up for that, you're not going to get results. And it's been interesting because for me, the best team has been Argentina and Colombia, because I think they have the best balance of...
Colombia's been so much fun to watch.
They have the best balance, in my opinion, of having this ability to fight and to scrap, but also when the football breaks out, to play.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the scrappy thing, you're not going to last. You're just not going to make it.
Sure.
And then if you can't put together some passes, then you won't put the ball in the back of the net. But it's just been really interesting when it comes to, again, like the dance and the aggressiveness and just the elegance, because one of them, to be fair, the Uruguay-Brazil game, it was a mess, but it's still fun. It becomes basketball. It becomes very transitional.
Yeah.
And to the average viewer, they might say, oh my goodness, this is a lot more fun to watch than watching France or England have 50 pass buildups, and it's center back to right back to center back to center back to holding mid, he turns, winger, back in, through, and the one team's like, cool, we're okay not having the ball. And the other team's like, we're okay just keeping it, not really possessing. Whereas you watch Uruguay and their center forward gets it at the half field line, he just sprints, and you got 6 runners. You see someone make a run, he tries to shoot, wow, tackle, referee goes, play on. The other team counterattacks, and it ends up being this transitional basketball style game. And it might not be the prettiest of football, but it's almost more entertaining. So I would see for the average viewer, depending on how you like to watch it, maybe watching Copa America might be more interesting just because of the chaos about it.
Sure. I want to go back to your team for a moment because we just talked about it just a second ago. It has been a tough stretch. You guys have lost 6 in a row. When you look back at at this stretch in particular, there's the result against Austin. Hassani gets a red card. You guys are down to 10 men. That probably could have been a result for you guys. Portland, where you guys had a 2-0 lead, that probably could have been a result. Galaxy just the other day, where you tie the game. A team who comes in ties the game. Late goal, a real heartbreaker for you guys in LA. Is it shock and dejection right now, or is it we have been in these games? We probably should have gotten results in at least 3 of these games. How does the team feel right now with where you guys are at?
A little bit of everything, to be completely honest. I think if you look at the stretches of games, and we can break them down, maybe not really intently. Mm-hmm. The Dallas game was tough. That was one of our worst performances of the year. No problem. You have bad games, especially away in Dallas. That's not an easy place to play. We also did not play well. We didn't deserve to win that one. And then we played in Seattle. It's always a tough place to play.
House of horrors for this organization.
I've heard.
Yeah.
But we didn't get a result in Seattle. Wasn't one of our better games, but we didn't play horrendous, but we just did not get a result. So now we fast forward a little bit to the game in Portland, the game in LA. Those were games in which we gave up goals 87 plus in the late ones.
Yeah.
And then you have the Austin game in which I think we deserved a tie. Austin was
without question. Even when you guys went down to 10 men, it's the second. If you watch the second half of that game, you guys are already down to 10 men, and you guys are the ones that are putting the pressure on, having the better opportunity than Austin in that game. That's what probably was really so frustrating for fans to watch from that game.
Exactly. And then you look at the goal we gave up, and I know Clint wants to have that one back.
Sure.
And he put his hand up as a true vet and a true professional that he is. So if you look up the goal that was given, and then the way in which the team responded and ran themselves into the ground for, I think we went down in the 30th minute. So you're thinking 67 minutes.
Yeah, about 30
down
sounds
a
about
man.
right.
Didn't make too many changes because, again, in Eric's defense, the team was on the front foot. Mm-hmm. They had to. We'll see. We can edit this part out. I don't know how serious some of those injuries were, but Austin was cagey enough. I hate to use that word, but they were tactically savvy enough and physically and emotionally savvy enough to recognize that they were under the gun.
Sure.
For the first 25 minutes of the second half until minute 70. We were all over them. Mm-hmm. They wanted no business of that game. Someone goes down, holds their foot, they make a sub or two, they slow the pace down, and eventually they kind of work themselves back into the game. But for the most part of that second half, we deserved at least a tie. And then again, if you look at the last 2 games where we've done and put ourselves in good enough spots, up until 87-ish, where we had ties, and the results go away. Maybe it's tired legs, maybe it's other teams' momentum. Even this Galaxy second goal, I really question whether that touch was meant to go over Joe's head. I am 99% certain that the guy tried to play a one-time ball across the box, and he flubbed it, and it just so happened to go over Joe's head, and then he squared it. So if he meant to do it, kudos to him. He'll never admit that, just like one of those people that hit the cross that ends up going into the net, and you're like, I saw the goal off his line.
Yeah, no, totally.
So there's just little moments, and for me, it just proves how thin the margins are. And if you look at some of the earlier games, we were winning some of those moments. You look at Columbus, you look at Orlando, you look at some of these games where we were able to be on the right end of that. And now we're on the wrong end of that. But ultimately, what I will say is we have a very good group, first and foremost, of veteran guys that are completely cool, calm, and collected during this moment, which when it comes to the group, usually you'll default and you'll look to some of the older guys. Hey, man, what are we doing? And between myself, Boxy, Clint, Robin, Will, some of the older guys, we know that this is just a tough moment in the sales and that we will get through it. And what's most important is getting back to the basics and focusing on the performance, as we're saying, because yes, the results are not getting there, and it's really easy to say that we deserve more, but I'm a very firm believer that if you focus on the performance and overall that the performance is better and deserving of that over the course of a season, you will get more results than you will not. And we play in a weird sport where you could dominate and you could still lose,
right,
or you could get absolutely crushed and sneak away with a win and you get there. So that's why focusing on the performance, focusing on the little metrics and the little data points and what you can control is extremely important. And as older guys, we're pushing down on that, and the coaching staff is reinforcing that as well. So it's just a matter of time before we get out of this.
Well, we certainly can't ignore that there's been a couple of changes to the roster as well over the last couple of weeks. Gone is Kervin Arriaga. Yep. Gone is Emanuel Reynoso. It's really been, particularly with the Emanuel Reynoso situation, I know that probably was frustrating for everybody involved. But when all of that finally came to a resolution, what was the mood like with the guys? I know he hadn't been with the team for a while. What was that like, just kind of having to live through that whole saga?
I would say with the Ray thing, to be completely honest, it was more of an issue last year.
Okay.
When he showed up and then eventually left, it was not a conversation. Nobody was, thinking, oh, where's Ray? What are we doing? We just got on with our job. Mm-hmm. And to be completely honest, we had been through this last year. And then when someone shows their cards in that sense, it just shows that they're not invested in the group. And I think when, again, the older group can say, you know what, like, we believe, and the coaching staff believes in the group that's here, and we only want people that want to be on the pitch. When you're playing, you want to look to your left and to your right, in front of you, behind you, wherever you're out in the field, and know that those guys are going to put it all on the line for you, that they're going to take a ball in the face, that they're going to track back for you, that we're going to do that. And Ray, awesome guy, showed his cards that he was not invested enough in the group. And for me, that was a very telltale sign that, it might be time for us to move on from this situation. And he's playing now in Mexico, and he got player of the match, I think, in his first game, which is great for him because he needed to change his scenery. And we had moved on, and seemingly he was moving on in his own way. But for me, I was so proud of our group for it was not even a distraction. It wasn't a conversation because we believed in what we had, and we had other players step up in those absences. Obviously, Ray's talent is just out of this world. One of the most talented players I've ever played with. But ultimately, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that is a very clear-cut picture of that statement.
It really is a shame, too, because like you said, he was an all-star just a couple of years ago. You just said it. He's one of the most talented, if not the most talented player or teammate that you've ever played alongside. And it really is it's a real shame. There's nothing more to say other than it's a real shame to see how it came to an end. Because, let's face it, when he's on the field with you guys, he's a difference maker. Mm-hmm. He's a difference maker on the field. But whatever it was, whether it's outside life circumstances or whatever, if he was trying to force his way out because he just didn't want to be here anymore, we don't know. I don't personally know the full extent of that story, but it's just a shame. It's a real shame to see how it went down, and wish him the best. But personally, I'm sure everybody's glad that saga is over. Kervin Arriaga, on the meanwhile, it's kind of almost a flip side of a story where he had just been playing so well for you guys, and another team across overseas took notice, and it just I was in the locker room after the game, after that Austin game, and that was, I believe, was his last game, if I'm not mistaken, because I kind of saw everybody kind of high-fiving and kind of wishing him the best of luck. The writing was on the wall that he was going to be on the move. But he was a great player for you guys as well. That's another tough blow for this team when a guy is playing really well and he goes out the door as well.
Yeah.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
Kervin's my guy.
Yeah.
We had a moment afterwards where I just gave him a big hug, and I told him I was really proud of him because we were injured at the same time, and his talent was undeniable. And when he's on playing to his ability, he was one of the better players in the league in terms of positionally where he was at, in terms of his aggressiveness, ability on the ball, defensive capabilities, everything. And I think the positional change for him at the time was fantastic because I think it allowed him, it took some of the ability to wander out, because Kervin, when he played, he's a dog. He wants to go get the ball. He kind of runs, and he might not be the most positionally stable guy in the middle because he's a hunter, right?
Yeah.
And when you play now in the center back position, you can't just do that. He can't just go wander and go eat. So it was awesome to see him adapt and then really embrace the change in the role. And I think it's a credit to him as personally and as a player to not fight it, to play the position, to embrace it, and then to pretty much seemingly run with it and then get the attention. And then credit to him again, he could have left and he could have said, you know what, I have a potential impending transfer. We didn't know all the details. I knew, he was potentially interested in leaving if the right situation came along. And he could have totally said, you know what, I don't want to play. I don't want to get injured. I have this thing on the horizon. If it gets injured, it falls through, and I don't like that. But kudos to him. He played 90-plus minutes, down a man, went from center back to center mid, and ran his tail off for all of that. And it makes me proud of, the long way he's come, because he's a very emotional player. He's a very emotional person. And he has high highs and low lows. But to be able to kind of see some growth and really some maturity over this course of the year made me really proud of him as all of his progress. And again, it's credit to him as a person, because he could have said, you know what, Eric, and MNUFC fans and everyone, I have this thing that's done and I don't want to risk anything. And I don't think anyone would have faulted him for that. But he went up to Eric and said, if you need me for this game, I know we're down, I'm in. Eric put him in, and he didn't slack off. He didn't just kick the ball away. You saw him chasing and running around for 90-plus minutes, leaving it all out there. Did a lap, got all emotional, and I think, left a really positive mark on the fans for someone that really cared about the badge and didn't put it above themselves. Yeah. So kudos to him. I'm really happy for him and his family for the move. I know he was excited. I know for him and his family, he just had a baby as well. It's awesome. And again, I couldn't be prouder for someone that I've known for a little bit, someone that, I've gotten to know close on a personal and friendship level, and to kind of be around. So I'm really happy for him. And for me, that's the right way to go about things. And hopefully if anyone else has that chance in the future, they can, model that behavior.
You were kind of joking with me before we started talking here today that your voice is a little hoarse because you were yelling at somebody in practice. Not somebody in particular. You were yelling at a lot of guys in practice. Did it get a little fiery out there today? What happened?
It didn't get fiery. It's just for me, when we're going through a tough stretch, I double down on the work.
Okay.
I'm not someone who will slack away from putting in the hard work, from training hard. I don't believe in that. I think you need to train smart. And especially when we're out there and we're going through the motions and we're with some of these young guys, if you're a younger guy and you're going to train with us, there's a certain standard that you have to have. And I will never, ever ask any of the younger players to do anything that they're physically or ability-wise not able to do. But when they start to mess up, or if they mess up on something that I know is just a concentration-based, or maybe they're getting a little bit tired, that's where I will push them to challenge themselves, because they're going to get exponentially better training with us than they will with the second team or with their academy team.
No question.
So with that comes the responsibility to play up to the certain level. Robin and Bongi and Sangbin and Fraga, these guys expect players, once you step onto the field, you're not an academy kid, you're training with the first team. So you have to be up to that level. And I push some of the younger guys because that's how I was pushed when I was younger, to hold a certain level. And I think it's important for that. And if they don't, I'm going to let them hear about it. I also expect that if I'm not doing well, or if I miss a pass, or if I'm not seeing something on the field, tell me. I'm fully capable. I'm a big boy.
You're open to criticism.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And, for example, with Darius is one of the most up and coming, one of the best prospects I think the academy has. And I hold Darius to a very high level because I see the potential. And yesterday he looked at me and we were playing a small-sided game. He goes, Z, why don't you look over and pass me the ball? And I said, well, tell me.
Yeah.
I said, if I don't see you for whatever reason, scream at me. So then next thing you know, the next game, he's requesting the ball and he's getting it and he's taking a guy on, he's scoring a goal, he's not. And that's the type of stuff I want to see, because obviously you can go about it in a respectful way and you can go about it in a way that shows confidence. And ultimately, I'm trying to instill as much confidence in the academy guys to know and believe that they can play with us, because the sooner they feel that confidence, the more they can grow and the faster they will actually get or put themselves in a position to get signed for the first team.
Communication certainly is key, not just in soccer, it's in any sports, in any profession. My question is, especially when you're dealing with the younger guys, can the younger guys that you've dealt with, and in your experience, can they take it? Are they handling it okay? Or you have to treat everybody differently? I
think when we kind of spoke about it last time, there's a way in which you can develop a relationship with the younger guy to where you can get through to them, or there's a way in which you can shut that door off. I played with a bunch of older veterans, old school guys that did not care about their relationship with me per se. They just wanted to win and they wanted to go about things a certain way. No problem. But I do believe that if you take an approach to where you get to know them a little bit on a personal level, you get to know what their goals are, who they are as people, where they come from, what they want to improve, what they think they need to improve, and their training habits, then you can develop a personal relationship where they know that, first off, it's not personal. It's never personal. And if it does, that's no bueno. And as an older guy, I'll never stand for anything if anybody gets any bit personal in the locker room, on the field. And this group doesn't do that. I've seen it happen. This group doesn't do that. But as a younger player, I remember they used to, it's so funny though, because my personality is I'm very loquacious, as my aunt would say. And I will show tough love at times. And there's been a lot of moments where on the field, you can't turn it off, right? When you're in the moment, when you're in those things, I will hold everyone to that certain standard. And I've seen in times some younger guys and will hear my criticism or just my recommendation to stay emotionally and mentally tuned in at all times. And I've heard someone say at times to one of the younger guys, "Hey, Z's being really hard on me." And the guy puts his arm around him and he goes, "Well, this is what happens." And then I hear that. So then I walk away and I make a note. Okay, cool. Circle back around. So he knows it's not anything personal. And I'll say, listen, I know that you can play to this certain standard and I'm going to hold you to that. If you don't want to be held to a high standard, that's okay. You're probably not going to succeed as much as you maybe could. But if I believe in you as an older guy, I'm going to push you to a certain standard and know that I care. I care about your development. I care about you as a person. I care that you are with us every day and you're training with us and you're making the other players better. You're making myself better. So I care. So I'm going to try to invest in your growth. I said, what you don't want is if I stop talking to you or if the veteran guys don't talk to you, that's no bueno. That's not good. That's where you'll start to see that they've either given up on you or they don't think you can cut it. So understand that I come from a place of love and I will always push you because I think you can do it. And especially someone who's played with MNUFC 2 this year, I know those guys on a different level. And to develop that connection and then to be able to push them, to kind of give them tough love at times, to kind of, hack them down two notches and then build them up 3. I think that's really important for them to continue to stay humble, but also to understand that, there is a level that if you're going to play and you're going to go against DJ in training and you're going to go against Michael Boxell, there's certain things you got to do. And you have to push them to make them better because they're relying on it as well. If we're on the scout team, we need to give them the clearest picture of Houston or Los Angeles or DC or San Jose that we possibly can. And you have to do that. If you don't, then you're no good and we might bring someone else up. So I have very tough love. I'm also like a lion-like defensive of the young guys because I see the value in pushing them. I also see the detriment if you break them down too much and you crush their confidence. So I'm very protective of the young guys and I'll be the first one to go and protect them. I'll also be the first one to let them know that I think they can potentially do better.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about it too, because I remember when I was playing and like some of this mentality kind of carries over into my own work personally too. Back in the day when I was a teenager, and I was very hot-headed and I was very, but at the same time too, I knew when I played well and I knew when I played poorly. Nobody could tell me that I played well or played poorly because I already knew. I was already overly critical. But at the same time, as I grew older and as I carried it over into my work now. Whenever somebody compliments me on my work, it's in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
I couldn't care less about receiving a compliment. I could not care less. When I hear criticism, I obsess over it and I almost want it. I almost invite it because in my mind, if I'm getting complimented all the time, I'm not working on what needs to get better. And whatever this fantasy make-believe image of what you want to be in terms of an athlete, in terms of a broadcaster, in terms of whatever it is your profession is, if you have this thought in mind that you should be here and you're constantly, if you feel like you're not getting it and you need the critique to get there, I don't know. As I'm saying it out loud, I was like, how healthy is that really? I don't know how healthy that really is. But at the same time, too, I know everybody gets pushed in a different way, and you said it. You got to know some of the guys on the 2 team pretty well, so you probably know better than some of the other guys in terms of what buttons to push. But in the world of professional sports, for as much as we've coddled so many areas of life for some of the children, it's still cutthroat, and they have to understand that.
And that's the biggest thing is we can be as nice as we want, but ultimately, and as a veteran, as an older guy, you know this, that there's always someone who's potentially younger, better, not better looking, but younger and better, ready to take your spot.
Sure, yeah.
And you have to understand that. So every day you're earning it. And again, as someone who hasn't played as much as I would love to have played this year, my job has been training maybe when the first team is doing regens, and then that involves a lot of these younger guys. And especially, you know, we look at what game was that? It might have been Austin, but there was one game, I think, coming back from international break where we had 7 academy guys, right? And I think when you go there's this expectation that comes with someone when they're coming up from the second team. But again, when they don't know some of the first team guys because they haven't played with them as much and they only come up for, you know, a short-term loan.
Right.
I think, you know, to kind of be someone that they can bounce ideas off of and talk to and be vulnerable with is really important. So the mentorship aspect is interesting. And one thing I'll ask you, and I'm curious to hear what your perspective is on this, but everyone has a different level of criticism that they can deal with. Some people can't. And one of the things I learned when I was learning with, when I was going through my degree in college was essentially a coaching course or one of these where it was a leadership course if you're a manager, and it was about managing the people below you and knowing that some people are highly functional with criticism. Some people are very low. Some people are in the middle.
Right.
So you have to identify that within people as quickly as possible to understand how to get the best out of them. And that was one thing. And, you know, we can look at our degree and all the classes and all the crazy things we took. That was one thing I took really closely because I saw a direct correlation when I was playing with all my teammates and how they did this. And for example, Michael Boxall is someone you can be as blunt as you need to be with. And
you don't say.
No, but Boxy's awesome because you can have a very blunt conversation if he makes a mistake, if he doesn't. And Boxy is one of the most consistent, best center backs I've ever played with in my entire career. And what's nice is he can take any sort of comment from any person and it's never personal. And I've played with other people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum. And I'm not going to say that because I just don't think they can take criticism. And taking criticism actually is a skill because you have to be open to being told that you're not either doing something right or that you can do it better. And people will be like, oh, well, you just don't like me. That's what you're doing.
Right.
So on this scale, do you think you are someone who is really highly able to take criticism? Or are you maybe in the middle? If 10 is you can take it, if 1 is you can't at all, where do you think you fall on that?
You're asking me personally?
You personally.
That's actually a really great question, and I'll answer it this way. I like to believe that I can take criticism well, and I feel like for the most part I can. I think my issue is I come across as defensive a lot of times, and I think only because in my mind and me knowing myself, nobody can be harder on me than me. Nobody.
Yep.
There's not a single person in the world like me. So I already put myself through the meat grinder.
Yep.
And once I'm done doing that, if somebody else comes to me after that to offer a critique, that's when I might get a little defensive or I might lash out a little bit. But I think what I need to do is always keep in perspective that it's always good to have a second pair of eyes because sometimes you don't see things. Sometimes, especially if you're analyzing yourself, sometimes you miss stuff. So I would like to believe I handle criticism well, but at the same time too, I already kind of know where I'm at after doing this for so long. I know where I'm at. I know where I'm not at. I know what needs to get better. Even if, I've been doing this a long time. So in my mind, I can't tell you the number of times I think to myself, boy, I flubbed this. That could have been better just because I maybe forgot something or mispronounced something or I'll never get to where I want to be. I go home with it all the time. All the time. All the time.
Yep. That's interesting. Again, each player is different and everyone is different. I think when you are working with your coworkers, it's important to know that. So when you have that relationship, while you understand that with your coworkers, will allow you to reach higher levels quicker because it helps you navigate your communication with said person. For example, also with that though, I do believe that the ability to take criticism differs depending on who's giving it. If you respect the person, seriously, if you respect the person giving it to you, you are more likely to take the criticism if it's someone who's your superior than if it's some random Johnny on Twitter that tells me I need to hit the ball better with my left foot.
Absolutely.
So, and that's where you kind of see, and that's why another reason I take my role seriously is just for the sheer length of how long I've been very fortunate to play allows you certain wiggle room to make points and have at least it be like taken in, right? And what I find most interesting is how certain players will be very good at being introspective first. And this is one thing I always tell the defenders, the young guys. Devin's someone that I've really been tried to take under my wing in terms of his development, because I think Devin could be incredible, and it's awesome to see his progression from last year to this year. And Devin has so many amazing things going for him, and Dev's going to be so much better than I ever was, and I'm so excited to see it. But what's great about Devin is Devin's really good at internalizing his performance first as opposed to pointing the finger. A lot of athletes and people in general, if something goes wrong, they'll say, you didn't, if I'm playing catch with my son, sometimes he'll go, Dad, you got to throw it better, as opposed to him missing it. But obviously a 4.5-year-old is different, but in general, on the soccer field, I urge players to immediately go, how could you have stopped this goal? Or how could you have helped create it first? Start there. And then that will start the conversation. Don't immediately point the finger and say, this guy got beat, so now I'm sitting here and I'm in a tough spot. So then it makes it hard on me. Okay, well, assume that he got beat. How could you have put the fire out? Or how could you have put yourself in a better spot? Or even, the amount of times as an outside back, the ball might be scored on the other half of the field, and I'm not involved. But I still think, man, if I could have slid this guy over, and maybe earlier in the play, if I tell him to sit left, he cuts the passing lane off. So I urge my players to be very introspective first, and then maybe go look out and say, well, obviously this player could have tackled. Obviously this player got beat on the dribble, whatever it might be, and then say, cool, that happened, but it's still on me now at this point to put the fire out. We are all firefighters as defenders, so it's important in that sense. But I would say that I urge these guys to be introspective first and foremost, and then that allows you, again, like you're saying, you're your harshest critic. And once you can do that, then you're able to maybe listen to what other people have to say.
Listening to you talk about it, it sounds like you have a future in coaching on the way. Is there a future in coaching for you? The way you talk about this, it sounds like I'm listening to ZV the coach at this point.
Well, I got my coaching license last month, actually, interestingly enough.
What timing?
So then I said now I'm officially a coach on the field. Unofficially, that's been the title for a while in terms of just helping guys maneuver through situations.
Is that something you want to do though? Like, is that because I mean, so many people think that players could make an easy, natural transition into coaching. A lot of players don't want to do it, and I don't blame them. But is that something that you even want to do?
I think the sad answer is in the right situation, yes.
Okay. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it.
Yeah, I think in the right situation, yes. I know that the schedule is not ideal. I want to, the coaches are grinders. So we show up. Oh, my schedule's embarrassing, but we show up at 9 o'clock, and then we're on the field by 10:30, and then we're done by 12.
Yeah.
And we're out if we don't lift or get a massage after training.
Hey, listen, anybody listening or watching that's jealous of that, hey, work harder, be a professional athlete. That's what I have to say.
Man, or you can just benefit off really good players like I have for a while. But I would say that we have the coaches are in there at 7 and they leave at 5.
Yeah.
So they're grinding, and they go to every away game, right? We have to fight to be in the squad to get there, but they go to every single away game. So their schedules are tough, and it's very cutthroat, as you know.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy the development process with individual players and with a group, and I particularly love the point I'm at in my career, to where I can say something to some of the younger guys and they don't wave their hand off immediately, or at least we'll have a conversation about it. And I want to also understand where they're coming from, how they put themselves in a situation, what they think they could do better, and also their perception of how they're doing. Because I think that's really important, right? Because you talked about being your harshest critic, but sometimes I think that now with the role of social media and the way things go, someone might put a post out there of themselves warming up and they'll see like king, like goat, him, all these things on social media.
Right,
and then
yeah.
it's like, well, how did you actually do in the game? Are we
Yeah.
going to, because, you know, the players, so fans will overreact in good and bad ways. And I think it's up to the player and the coaches to try to sift through that as best as possible,
Yeah.
to break down how did you actually do on a day and how can we actually get better? Because no one's ever reached perfection, and we're consistently striving to be the best version of ourselves as players and people we can be. But I think it's a matter of sifting through that as much as possible. And then again, once you can have these open and honest conversations with the players, that's when growth can really come.
No doubt about it. I mean, listen, and you know, whether you're a professional athlete or whether you do something else completely, you know, nobody's a robot. Everybody's got their own, you know, trigger points. I can easily tell you what my trigger point is if somebody comes after me online. There's a specific term that I'm not going to repeat, even though it's nothing foul or, you know, salacious or anything like that. But there's a specific term that's been used toward me once, maybe twice, that absolutely infuriates me as a journalist. But, you know, I'm not going to say it because
I'll ask you off the air.
So you'll ask me off the air. Somebody, so if I say it now, they'll come after me with it, and I can't help myself.
Yeah,
I can't help myself
course.
but respond. So, you know, in that regard, yeah, it's difficult to be coach, manager. You got to press the right buttons.
Yeah.
You got to press the right buttons. You got to know who to. A one-size-fits-all mentality might have worked in the past. It might work now in some situations, but we've got too many different personalities. We've got too many people who were raised in different ways, and it's too difficult. It's too difficult. You have to really, you know, as a coach now, you have to maybe go the extra mile to have an extra kind of personal connection with your players in order to get the best out of them. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not here to say, but that's kind of what it feels like, the reality of the situation, not just at the youth level, but across all sports.
It's really hard. And I mean, our team is 30 guys. I couldn't imagine an NFL coach that has
Oh, gee, I mean,
50 guys, and then basketball coach might be a little bit easier because you only have what?
you got 12 to
15-ish.
15, yeah.
So it's easier to do that, but also it's a tough line because you want to do so, but you also want to do so in a genuine way.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because you can sniff BS the second
doubt.
someone talks to you.
No doubt.
So to try to develop personal relationships is extremely difficult. I think it's important because it gives you an intro into the psyche of players in terms of playing them, not playing them, how to manage them when they're doing well, how to manage them when they're not doing well. And I think that's extremely difficult. And then the other layer to that is what's really important from there is the assistant coaches. Mm-hmm. And I think, for example, I think our staff is a really good balance of a lot of those things. You know, Eric is not a typical manager in the sense of being hands-off. You know, Adrian was a typical manager. Adrian was a typical English manager. I had one meeting with him in his office, and that's his style. And I've had other coaches be like that as well, where they're a little bit more distant and not as hands-on every single day. The assistant coaches kind of fulfill that role and do that.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot in England. You see that in plenty of other places. And then you see some coaches try to be buddy-buddy with people, and it almost feels disingenuous at times because they tell everyone they're doing great, everything's going awesome, and then suddenly you start to not get results. And then you have to have tough conversations, and you've put so much fluff out there that now players don't believe you when you're saying certain things. So there's a little bit, there's no perfect way to go about it. Obviously, both the coaches that I've had in that certain style have had a lot of success. Adrian had a lot of success.
Sure.
And each coach has their own way to go about it. Do I think that there's a perfect way? No, but I think ultimately Adrian had a staff with Sean and Ian that could help fulfill it in some of those holes in terms of those conversations which he didn't have, which typically managers do. Eric has some of those, but again, he has Cam and Dennis, and we have Adi as well that help fill in those gaps. And I think that's a credit to Minnesota because the 4 to 5 assistant coaches we've had this, since I've been here have all been awesome. That really balance out the coach in a lot of good ways. So it is truly a day-to-day, hour-by-hour thing where you're constantly managing because all these guys have egos. All my teammates have egos in some way. So you're trying to keep people happy, and it's tough because it's professional sports, and you can only put 11 out there, and you can only make 5 subs, and it's not easy.
Listen, when people talk about egos, you know, you have to have an ego. People talk about having an ego as if it's a bad thing, and it can be a bad thing. But when you reach a certain level of professionalism in whatever profession you do, you have to have some level of ego about you. Otherwise, what reason would anybody have in terms of having any confidence in you that you can do the job? If you don't believe you can do the job, and if you don't believe you can do the job better than the next guy, then nobody else is going to believe it.
And that's it. It's a confidence in yourself and a competitiveness with other people. And I would say the worst thing about it is, for lack of a better explanation, in my opinion, and I've seen this for a while, our salaries are public. So you're literally given, you're competitive. You have a confidence in yourself, and then your value is literally on the internet for everyone to see.
That reminds me, can I borrow $20?
So you can compare and don't ask. I can tell you to ask. Don't ask me. But you can compare and contrast your value. So you have your confidence, and you can say, I believe I can do this, and then it's you suddenly start to compare yourself to people outside of our own circle.
Yeah, it's only natural.
And then you see people's not even perceived values,
actual
values.
Dollars and cents value.
It's not like, oh man, we're at Fox and this guy's here this way. Like, no, this is actual values. And I think that that's something that, in my opinion, should not be public for a variety of different reasons. As one of the guys in the PA, I've been pushing for years to get that down. But I do believe that it's tough, though, because that will create animals in terms of competitiveness. But what I always preach to the players, and you can believe that decision is the player is not making the decision to play. The coach is doing that. So any vendetta you have thinking it's personal between you, someone, or you're better than this, that's fine. No problem. The coach is the one who puts the people on the field.
Yeah.
And at times people can't separate that because they'll say, oh, this guy's like doing this. We can't, how can I be in this case? But that's the case. But I do believe there's a way in which you can balance each individual ego to push yourself. I'm still competitive. I don't want to lose anything. Even, for example, when I was in Houston, we let go of our coach with 5 games left in the season. And what we did was we had a training competition. So they had points for every single thing we did in training for the last month and a half of the season, from the passing drill to the possession to the small-sided to the big games 11s. We got points. I had played 4 games that year. I started 2. And I barely played over the course of that stretch, but I just couldn't turn off my competitiveness. Guess who won the training competition? Yours truly.
How about that?
I won 70% of every single drill that we did, whether it was passing or not. And that was based off of passing drills, possession, 5v2. And that's just a small picture of the fact that I can't turn that off. Even if I'm not playing, I can't turn that off. Even now, if I'm not playing as much as I'd like, I can't turn that off. And a lot of my teammates can't. So harnessing that in a way in which it's kind of this Dragon Ball Z flame to where it's good and used towards positive is extremely important, because if that starts to veer its ugly head, that's when it's difficult. When people start to think that they deserve better when they're above the team, that's when things can really get off the rails. But thankfully, we don't have any of those guys.
It's funny that you mentioned the term above the team, because this has been my biggest, and I'm a huge hockey fan, huge hockey fan. My biggest issue, especially with the NHL, is there's so much of the old guard and old thinking, because you don't really see. I find it to be a sport that does a horrendous job of promoting its stars. Stars sell leagues. Stars attract people to games. And the NHL, with this old archaic thinking, like you said, even though if we get to a point where player salaries are not public, if you're on the team, you know who the dogs are.
Yep.
You know who the best players are. You see it in practice every day. You see it in the games every day. You know who the best players are. And there's this thought process in the NHL and in hockey locker rooms, well, no one can be above the team. And that includes, maybe not doing a commercial, or maybe not, trying to maybe promote yourself in a way that seems above the team. And to me, this is not detrimental to the team itself. This, in a way, to me, gets more eyeballs on you. And I take it, I sound very bitter about it, even though I never played hockey a day in my life. I sound bitter about it because I love the game so much, and I think it's such a great sport, and it has so much to offer, but yet it refuses to promote its stars and say, you could have some of the big... Connor McDavid can walk down the road in Southern California and nobody would know who he is. Not a single idea. Clue. And the guy, I'm not going to say he's the second coming of Gretzky, but if you watch Connor McDavid play hockey, I mean, this guy is something else.
He was wild in the Stanley Cup final.
He is a superstar. Yeah. A superstar. And yet everybody, if you put him next to, LeBron James.
If you put him in a lineup.
Yeah, you put him in a lineup, nobody would pick him out. I mean, LeBron James is a terrible example. He's one of the most recognized athletes on the planet. But when it comes to the NBA and how they promote their stars, the NFL, the way they promote their stars, when I see the NHL not doing that, it almost feels like an insult to the player's intelligence, in my opinion, for the exact reason I just talked about. Because you guys know, and as a professional athlete, you know on your own team who the guys are, and and how they could probably help draw eyeballs to the league.
Well, I was in the league when Beckham was in the
league. Right. Yes.
And the thing is, I think I understand and I respect the NHL for what they're doing. But everyone knows there's certain players that are higher up. When Ray was here, and Rob and Temu, and some of these guys are viewed in a different light because of either where they've been, whatever it might be. Rob's an all-star. Shout out Rob. He's killed it this year.
The American fans may not know it though. The MLS fans, for the most part, may not know that.
Criminally underrated for years.
Agreed.
The amount of players around the league that I've known just because I'm old, that come up to me and they're like, "What's Robin like?"
Yeah,
we've played against him. He's dog. He's good. And he doesn't. No one talks about him because we're in Minnesota.
Right.
If he played for a Los Angeles team or a New York team or Miami, he'd be one of the faces. But they're like, "What's he like?" We played against him. I've always thought he's so good, and I'm like, he's even better than you think. So, wow. And I thought that coming here, I was so interested to kind of see him because as a winger, I had to go directly up against him, and I was like, this sucks. But yeah, so there's an understanding, and the thing is, what I find interesting is no one questions it. No one's like, why is this guy doing the Adidas media stuff at the beginning of the season? It's like, oh no, like it makes sense. Like, no problem. So that's where I don't understand it because, as Spider-Man's uncle says, with great power comes great responsibility. Right. And I think that we all get that, and we're not dumb.
Yeah.
And so that's where I understand with the NHL. I respect it, but at the same time, when you do watch, Connor McDavid and now Connor Bedard.
Connor Bedard is the next upcoming.
Yes,
yeah, former number one overall pick.
These guys are wild. And my wife obviously is from Montreal. We touched on that. Yeah,
yes,
I wouldn't be with her now. We're together, living a happy life. But she, big hockey house. Obviously.
No
so
doubt.
we're watching the Stanley Cup Finals and just watching this guy do some crazy things. Brought up some of the Gretzky things that we used to look up and how he's, in my opinion, the greatest of the greatest. If we're going to look up the greatest of the greatest.
You're talking
athletes,
about Gretzky?
Yes.
Oh, it's as somebody who grew up in a household where Michael Jordan was God and is still considered to be, when you look at Michael Jordan's contribution to the game of basketball compared to Wayne Gretzky's contribution to hockey, it's not even close.
No.
It's not even close. Wayne Gretzky, his numbers and his ability to elevate that league is something that I would argue has not been seen on a professional level in any major sport.
No, it's not even close.
No.
I was talking, and we used to do with Donnie Fuller, who was our old athletic trainer, works for the national team now. He's big hockey. I worked for the Wild for plenty of years. We used to go over Gretzky's stats and, the 3 or 4 200-point seasons, which 200-point season's never been done. He's only done it, and he did it 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Winning 7 or 8 MVP straight out the gate. But the one that I found nuts, this was crazy, was the Gretzky Rule. Have you heard of the Gretzky Rule?
I believe I have, but refresh my memory.
The Gretzky Rule was, so essentially when his team would get a power play, so they're up a man.
Yeah.
They intentionally would get a penalty to create a 4v4 situation. Because he was so dominant and having less people on the ice, they would intentionally get a penalty so that they would give him essentially more space.
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact statistic, but he was so dominant on the 4v4s, the NHL had to make a rule that you could not intentionally get a penalty to create a 4v4 situation. So think about this. The Oilers last season had the best power play ever. Mm-hmm. So imagine that team saying, you know what, we'll take our odds 4v4,
right,
as opposed to saying we'll take it will be up a man.
Yeah.
And so he was so good that they're intentionally taking a man off the ice to give themselves a better chance of scoring than being up a man.
Is that not insane?
Yeah.
Is that not actually one of the most insane things you've ever heard of?
It doesn't make any sense.
It's wild. No, it's absolutely wild to me. No, I mean, we got a few minutes left here, and before we wrap up, like I mentioned earlier in the show, you brought up Forrest Gump. The only reason I'm going to bring it back around to that is that is in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. Top 3 favorite movies. I'm going to go, Forrest Gump, Cinderella Man, and Superbad for sure for me. Have you ever seen Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe? By the way,
not no.
It is
very long.
It is so
the boxing one, right?
Yes, the boxing movie.
One.
Yeah, he and Renee Zellweger. It is so underappreciated in terms of, not just in the category of sport movie, in movies, in cinema in general. I just thought it was just a phenomenal film.
Yeah.
Just absolutely phenomenal. You should probably watch it tonight. Just give yourself a refresher.
We have my wife's anniversary night tomorrow, so maybe we can.
Don't do that. Do something more fun than that, please.
We're watching Cinderella Man. Pierre recommended it.
I already got you in trouble one time on this podcast. I'm not going to do it again.
No, it's all good. She enjoyed the story and then gave me a bunch of crap when I got home about it. So it's perfect. I threw myself under the bus and then put it in reverse. And
it's all for the name of entertainment.
Exactly.
That's all for the name. Are you what's up there for you in terms of the movies? What are you watching?
Mine are not as fun as that.
They're not as fun?
No, mine would be Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, obviously.
Is my favorite movie probably. Which ones would I throw up there? I can tell you Caden Clark's favorite movie is Interstellar. He loves it. I don't know why he loves that. It comes up a lot in the locker room.
I'm gonna have to bring that up to him at some point. Interstellar is his favorite movie.
His favorite movie. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a comedy guy, so I'd probably throw
Sure. Let me ask you this then: if you're a comedy, because just recently over the weekend, I can't tell you how excited I was. This is me showing my age, but I can't tell you how excited I was for. Oh my gosh, the Dutch just nearly took the lead. For Beverly Hills Cop 4, which is titled Beverly Hills Cop, it's titled Axel F.
Yeah.
To come out. The first Beverly Hills Cop movie with Eddie Murphy is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's something that I watched with my dad as a kid. It's one of my favorite movies. So to see it come back, and I would say it was pretty good. It was better than I thought it was going to be. It's on Netflix now. If you ever watched the Beverly Hills Cop series, I think it's worth a watch.
The thing is, they're remaking a lot of movies now.
It
seems as if they're running out of ideas. So you see Beverly Hills Cop 4. They're doing Happy Gilmore 2 apparently. Which
they really?
Supposedly, I don't know.
Well, I saw the promo yesterday for Gladiator 2, which I was like, why?
I know they did. They did another remake of all these comedies, but like years and years. They did Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, and then they did Dumb and Dumber again.
Yeah, I just don't know why. It's like they're going back to the well.
There's a big craving for, especially in the entertainment world, people in I guess I don't like to lump myself into the millennial category, but since I was born in 1984, I think I'm on the tail end of it, in that cutoff. So there's such a craving for nostalgia.
Oh yeah, it's a huge thing.
Which in turn has, in my opinion, been a detriment to the things that you hold dear to your heart in terms of entertainment, whether it's TV shows, movies. They go back and they do these things. And, I remember seeing episode 7 of Star Wars in the theater, the first of the newer 3.
Yep.
And at the end of the movie, everybody, stupidly, I don't know why people applaud at the end of a movie. They can't hear you. But everybody's like clapping at the end of the movie, and I'm thinking to myself, that movie sucked.
Which one was this one?
This was episode 7, so this was the first of the newer ones, which I think came out in 2016.
That was one of the better ones, though. I think, I haven't watched past that, but I remember this was like, they went, it's... It 3, 4, 5, and then they went 1, 2, 3, and then they went
4,
7.
5, 6,
4, 5,
then
6.
1, 2, 3, then 7. So 7 is the one. I don't care. The movie's been out for 8 years. This is where Harrison Ford dies. Where what's his name? I can't remember. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name in the movie. What's his name?
It's not.
Whatever. It's not important. It sucked. It's the same. Episode 7. If you look at episode 7 and you look at episode 4, they're the same movie. They're the same exact movie with just different people in different roles. It's the same movie. That movie was trash. Actually, Star Wars as a whole is trash.
Oh, we're getting him going now. We're getting him going now.
Actually, 4, 5, and 6, I mean, the originals are great. I will say the Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One, which is the movie that's, if you're going by the order of the timeline.
Is it 8?
No, it came out a few years ago, but it's essentially episode 3.5. It's essentially a story that happens between episode 3 where
get it off your chest, you guys,
and episode 4.
This has been brewing for a little
that
bit.
That movie, in my opinion, is the best Star Wars movie, and it's a phenomenal movie in general. Rogue One is phenomenal. After that, it's all whatever. It's such an overrated franchise. It's embarrassing.
You don't say that too loudly. You're gonna have pitchforks and.
Hey, Star Wars fans, everything that you love about the franchise, it sucks. Okay, it sucks. It's very overrated. But I don't want to go out on that. But you guys have another match coming up this weekend.
Yeah, we have Houston, which is near and dear to my heart.
And that's a tough place to play at this time of year too.
Yeah, it's hot. It'll be. They just had a hurricane go through there.
In different parts of Houston. Actually, I saw it hit. It's a little place called Surfside, which I've been to down there about an hour south of Houston. Phenomenal place. Not many people know about it. It's just such a great place on the beach.
You don't go to Galveston, as Charles Barkley says. You don't go to Galveston.
Been there. I've done it once. Once is enough. It's fine. I would go back, but there's no reason for me to go back.
Yeah, so don't go back. We went to Rockport, which was 3 hours south, but on the coast there. There's some really cool beaches.
Oh yeah,
on the south there.
Not many people know about it either. Like that. I mean, that coastline on East Texas, on the Gulf. There's a lot of great spots out there.
Yeah, there's some good spots. Don't go to Galveston, as Chuck says. Do not go to Galveston. No. That dirty ass water.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
But I would say this week has been good. The team needed a little bit of a down week mentally, emotionally, physically to get back to some sort of a baseline, to get back to basics. And what better place to go than somewhere we got 3 points last year?
Yeah.
It's going to be always a tough match. They have some good players. They play a good style with Ben. Shout out Ben Olsen, one of my Pennsylvania native coaches in the league. I know a bunch of those guys still, so they're going to be up for it. But in terms of us, it's a game that we won last year. They haven't changed too much of their roster, so we should feel confident going into this game that if we control the controllables, right, go there. We understand it's going to be we're going to be in an oven. That's what we jokingly call the shell oven is the stadium.
I was in the stands for one game. This was 4th of July weekend a number of years ago. I remember, and as somebody who likes it hot, even I was like, I don't know how these guys are playing this.
It's bad. I will say it's the best field in the league, in my opinion.
Really?
Beautiful field.
Yeah, I've been to the stadium. I've seen a match there, but I didn't. In terms of playing on it, you like it the best.
They redid the field my second year there in 2021.
Interesting.
From that point,
yeah.
Immaculate. And
really?
Even the players poll voted it the best field in the league. It's beautiful.
Hey, well, that's great.
I mean, obviously they don't need the heat lamps.
Oh, no,
so
they
just
don't.
water a little bit and cut it. But yeah, beautiful field. It will be a football match, which I think is exciting because it's not, they play a very possession oriented style. And again, for us, what better way to get back into the swing of things by going to a place we got a result in last year after a week's rest where we can kind of reset, mind, body, soul.
Sure.
Get some good training in, and to go there and to hopefully put in a good performance. It's going to be a tough one, but I think, again, as a player, those games are exciting, and then they make you get up for it because it's not it's going to be a great environment and somewhere that'll be fun to play. So I'm excited. I mean, obviously, hopefully the fans come out in droves depending on the heat. Typically the fans have gotten better since my time there because the team plays a style that's more appealing to the eye. They like to play a possession-oriented style with 3-6-1 when they have the ball, and they bop it around a little bit. But as always, I back my guys to control the controllables, to go out there and execute our game plan. And I think we'll put ourselves in a good position, hopefully get a result and get back on the horse. I don't know if we want to get
back on the horse. That's an idiom that we can use. A driver's seat. Well, I mean, and let's be honest too. 3 points is going to result in even though you guys have fallen to 10, 3 points could put you back up to 6th or 5th.
Yeah.
It's that tight. There's certainly no reason to panic at this point. There's plenty of soccer left to be played. So you guys come away with 3 points. You're right back in the mix.
Yeah,
you're right back in the mix.
And then we put ourselves in a great position to play our last 2 home games before Leagues Cup.
We're barely going to see you guys the next couple of months, or next 6 weeks, I should say.
Yeah, to where we put ourselves in a good spot with 2 home games coming back for Leagues Cup. Get back some guys from Copa, maybe some new signings come in.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time for the club, for myself, and for everyone involved. And it's just a matter of, again, keeping your highs low and your lows high. And again, I'm going to continue with these ridiculously cliche statements. But the funny thing is, it's so true, though, because it's true if you practice them. right? You can have all these cliche sayings. You can put bulletin board stuff up on the wall about controlling the controllables and, you know, not getting too low when you're in a bad moment and not thinking you've made it when it's too high. But if you actually go out there and execute it and have players who've been through tough moments to kind of steady the ship, and, you know, Eric's been a very steady presence, and to have that at the helm is awesome because, again, it takes the focus off of potentially the results. And I know we should focus on them because they haven't been good, and there's certain things we can switch, and no one's going to deny that. But if you focus mainly on the performance and focusing on what each player can control, and as Mr. Bill Belichick himself would say, doing your job. Yeah, you can hear that on the mic, but doing your job,
it's emphasizing it,
focusing on those things, we're going to put ourselves in a great spot to get some points.
Well, there you have it. If you happen to be down in the Houston area, you know, go check out the Loons and the Dynamo this weekend. And then go to Little Woodrose right after. It's not too far away down there in downtown. Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic spot down there in Houston. I lived down in Texas for 4 years. I know my way around Texas. It's a great spot. For Zarek Valentin, hey, thanks, man. Appreciate you coming in. We're going to do this again. This is something that we're going to be continuously doing here on the Fox 9 studios. So appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Fox 9.